Hey guys, it's your boy Charles here, and today I've got a very special guest on the channel. It's our first guest interview with my good friend and mentor, Robert Neckelius. Robert, welcome. How are you doing?
Thanks, man. Yeah, really good. I didn't know it was the first guest, but I appreciate that. Very grateful and happy to be here.
Good man, good man. How's life in Poland at the moment? I know we're in crazy times, but
yeah, given the circumstances, I honestly can't say that my life has changed much, even though, as we're recording this, Corona is like massively spiking every day more and more. But, I'm in the hunker down and get work done kind of phase anyway. Got two young kids that need taken care of. So now we've just moved and I've set up this awesome home office. And so I'm just really actually enjoying being at home as far as working goes. And then, there's no commute. If I want to pop in for lunch and then, play with the kids for 10 minutes, I can do that and come back to work. And we're doing this call right now, this recording in the evening, which is something that would have been very difficult when I had an actual office. So we're getting a real office again once this kind of settles down and putting all of our staff in there. But honestly, yeah, given the circumstances, I couldn't be happier, to be honest.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. Sounds like you got a good setup. I know you've obviously just moved to Warsaw as well, so I guess just adjusting to a new city.
Yeah.
So obviously today I want to go through a number of different things. The reason I brought Robert on is because he's gone through the whole journey of building an online business, and he's been involved in different types of online businesses. So I think he can give you great perspective from, if you're just starting out all the way up to if you're maybe at the 6-figure mark in terms of revenue and you're looking to maybe then go from 6 to 7. There's going to be I'm hoping some really great insights he can give into how he did that. So just to give you guys a little bit of background on Robert, his current company is Automatic Clients. He's one of the co-founders there, along with his business partner, and he's also the author of Automatic Clients. You can see here, which I'm going to read out because I don't want to butcher it, which is how to acquire hundreds of new customers per day and convert those customers into high-paying clients. Yeah, which obviously I think a lot of people are going to be curious to find out. So, Robert, if you wanted to I don't know if there's anything you wanted to potentially add to that in terms of where you're at the moment, and it'd be great to give the audience a bit of a background into yourself and how you started and who you are.
Sure. Started in 2012, was introduced to this whole idea of making an online business effectively, which was always something that I wanted. I just didn't have anywhere to look for any type of guidance. So I bought this course in 2012. I started my first agency. I made one website. It was a web design agency. And then I kind of pivoted into the whole explainer video, video production space. And I ended up building that agency up to 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, and then automating myself out of that effectively to the point where I was barely touching that business, and actually recently sold that business because even though I was barely working in it, there's still a little bit of your brain that's kind of like, hey, I need to do this and this thing. Even though it's not taking up much of your time, it's like, I don't want anything to take away from our main business at the moment. So I ran that for about 8 years and tried tried to sell online courses and so on many different times using many different tools or conversion mechanisms such as webinars and so on, and just was never able to get it to pop off. And I think the reason why is that there's kind of this inherent problem with webinars where you are almost tricking people onto a 2-hour presentation in order to then pitch them something at the end. And then people are, for the most part, gambling with $1,000 or, $997, which is kind of the standard price point, for an online course, which may or may not solve your problem. And so I never was able to make it work. And then one day, my current business partner, Alan, he had showed me one of his clients who was selling like hundreds of books a day. And I thought, instead of trying to sell this webinar where they don't know what they're going to get and they're going to have to spend $1,000 to get it, why don't I just put everything into a inexpensive book, and then we'll upsell them into, you know, the higher ticket coaching program. So I ended up, let's see if I have this here actually. I ended up putting my agency experience into this puppy, to our agency. And honestly, it was the first time I tried that way of doing it. Did one post on my Facebook profile, which I think at the time I had maybe 1,000, 2,000 friends. So by no means like a big following or anything like that. Put some bullets of like what to get, you know, what you're going to get in the book. And was telling myself that, hey, if I can sell 5 copies of this to my friends list, then we might be onto something, and proceeded to sell 103 copies in the next 48 hours. That's when I was like, all right, there's something to this whole thing. And so we ended up building a 7-figure business in the following 12 months. And then we have now sort of taken that whole thing that we did with this book and turned it into a really solid strategy. And that's what the Automatic Clients book that you showed is all about. And so that's kind of where we're at now. So it's been a journey, and it's getting better each year.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows as well. You said you started back in 2012. You know, I think people think they see these big claims about you know, making X amount of money in a short space of time, but the reality is you have the journey before that. You know, from 2012 up until maybe 2018, 19, you're learning, and then you had that big leap where you went from obviously 6 to 7 figures in a very short space of time.
Yes.
So, a lot to unpack here. So let's go back to running your agency. Okay. So you said that you got to the point where you were able to automate the agency. So you were working a couple of hours a week, from my understanding.
Not even that. Honestly, I'm not joking you, about 30 minutes a month. That like 2-hour agency is a lie, meaning like you can, you know, do this 2 hours a week. I was working way less than that.
Yeah, which is, I mean, the reality is most small business owners are within the weeds of their own business. You know, they're still in that, and it doesn't seem like a reality to most agents, certainly agency owners. So tell me the process of how you went from, say, normal agency to automatic agency on autopilot, working less than 2 hours a week, maybe 2 hours a month, maybe. I don't know. So explain to me the journey there.
Sure. I'd say that the biggest thing that made that possible was this idea of standardizing services within the agency. So before I did that, you know, we would get incoming leads. The one lucky thing that I did, which actually is quite relevant to you, is I was ranking on page 1 for Google for, you know, animated videos, whatever the term is in Swedish. So I would get inbound leads every now and then. And so they would come to us, and then we would have a meeting, right? Whether it was on the phone, in person, via email. And I would try to like discover their needs, right? And then create a proposal based on their needs that we discussed in that meeting. I would send over the proposal 80% of the time, 90% of the time. You wouldn't hear back from them. You have to chase them down, try to close the sale. And that was the process. And throughout that process of having X amount of those meetings, when you really boiled it down, the only difference in what people were ordering from us was how long their video was going to be. And so if you think about that, it all of a sudden becomes very possible to turn this sort of completely made from scratch, tailor-made solution to each client, turn that idea into sort of a restaurant menu where like, there's 5 things on the menu, which one do you want? And so that opened up possibilities of putting the menu on a website, and rather than having the face-to-face meetings or the phone calls, because all that's happening there is they're ticking a couple of boxes in their head until the conversion happens, meaning they want to see that we're a real company, they want us to answer their questions, they want to see the pricing, they want to check out other examples. So why don't we just automate that whole process? And so I ended up effectively condensing the whole process and automating it and systemizing it. Well, systemizing it first and then automating it to the point where people would just come to our website and place an order right then and there. And then instead of having a meeting, we just sent them a form of like, hey, who's your audience? What's your goal with this video? How long of a video do you want? And so once you have that process figured out, that's kind of step one, right? Like, is there a process here that we can repeat? And once you have that figured out, then you just look at the process. Say there's 6 steps in the process, and then you just look at each one. And I usually try to think of eliminate, automate, delegate in that order. So I look at the 6 steps and I say, can we eliminate any of these steps? Because there's no point in automating something that you should have eliminated in the first place. And there's no sense in automating something that you should have, there's no sense in delegating something that should have been automated by a computer. And so you figure out the steps, and then you kind of look at each single step and say, hey, can I get rid of it? If not, can I get a computer to do it? If not, can I get another person to do it? And if you just go through that process, you find out, depending on the business that you're in the in a common agency, most of those things are either, you can either get rid of them, you can automate them, or you can delegate them to the point where all you're doing is paying bills and sending invoices if that's how you get paid. So that was kind of the process. Yeah.
And I know you've got an interesting take on your thoughts on high ticket versus low ticket. I know you've talked about that before. Delve into that, for the people listening. And
so this is kind of the whole premise of the Automatic Clients book. And the thing is, the most expensive and oftentimes the most difficult aspect of a business, especially for new entrepreneurs or new business owners, is the acquisition of new customers. And the reason why that's difficult is, number one, like we just talked about, like, is there a repeatable process? Usually there isn't. It's hey, let me put out some content. Hey, let me do some cold calls. Hey, let me do some email. There is not a repeatable process behind it. It's just kind of like, let's try things, and we'll keep doing that until we get a client, and then we'll have to do it again until we get the next client. So so you have that part. I kind of lost my train of thought here. Sorry, what was the question?
No, in terms of, I know that you've talked about before the difference in terms
the
of low ticket versus high ticket, and how you decided to slash your prices.
So the idea is that first of all, they don't know what they're doing. The process isn't there. And then when it comes to actually signing up a client, basically a lot of people try to go for the high ticket right off the bat. And typically the higher the price point, the more resistance and so on you have to overcome, and the harder it's going to be. So our whole thing is, and this started with the agency, was what if we created, rather than having this like amazing product that was incredibly expensive, what if we just made like a respectable product that was more for the masses rather than these bigger companies with deep pockets? And what happened was, the fact that we lowered the prices allowed people to just go to our website and order. And so the volume of customers started to increase. And because the volume of customers started to increase, that those processes within the company, not just the client acquisition part, but the actual deliverables, they also started to become, rather than going through the process of delivering 1 video a month, you start doing 5 or 10. Well, now you start to actually get a bit more efficient with that process. You try to eliminate things, you try to automate things, you try to delegate things, like I talk about. And so the whole thing that we eventually realized, to boil it down, is if you're able to just bring customers into your world, you don't have to make a profit. But if you're able to bring customers into your world, they buy something from you, then you can upsell them, and the back end can be 100% profit. So this book that you're seeing on the shelf, which is launching very soon, we're not going to make any money on the book. There you go. We're not going to make any money on this book. Nothing. And there's upsells to go along with the book too. We're taking all of that money and putting it back into advertising so that more people can find out about us, more people can buy the book. And so we get 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 customers per day. And there's always a percentage of those customers that will buy other things from us. And so what this allows us to do is take this thing that I said was so difficult, right? The client acquisition of, people finding out about us is the most difficult and the most expensive. So not only do we remove the difficulty because we completely automate it because, we're selling a book, so it's all sold through a sales page. So the difficulty is gone. And also, the volume is going to be there because so many people are able to come in, and so we're able to go out there and do it on repeat. And like I said too, it's expensive, right? So the difficulty goes away, and the whole idea that customer acquisition is expensive goes away because we're getting them for free. Because they buy the book and we put all the money back into ads, and then when we sell them something else, that's when we make our money. And so that's kind of the fleshed out version. It wasn't this clear in my head when I was building this and so on, but now we really fleshed out the details, and that's really a terrific way to get people into your funnel and get hundreds of customers per day, and then upsell them into other products and services.
Yeah, no, it's what you've put together is that predictable system. And certainly agency owners, small business owners, they're constantly in this loophole of where, how can I find more customers? Whereas you've been able to look at it and go, okay, maybe we're not going to make any money on the front end, but let's get some awareness and let's get people knowing about us, and let's get people experiencing our service or product at a smaller level, and then we've got the opportunity to then upsell as they trust you and get to know who you are. So now I think what you've been able to do and what you've been able to teach other people to do now, I think is certainly the way forward. I mean, look, let's be honest here, and let's I don't like to sound doom and gloom, but the reality is there's going to be a lot of businesses that are going to go under during the next year, 2 years, and if they're not able to effectively pivot and change the way they do business, then it's not gonna work out. I think companies really need to look at the different levels and be a little bit more strategic and have a bit of a longer term thinking into how they grow the organization. So now that makes sense. So obviously we talked about sort of your agency, and you were talking about things like processes and having that predictable funnel that brings in clients, lowering your prices, looking at structuring things, packaging things together. How did you then decide, okay, I've built this agency, I'm barely working, it's bringing in predictable income. What was your thinking behind why did you decide to then go, okay, now I'm going to teach it. Now I'm going to teach how to do this. And what was the journey from, okay, I've made multiple six figures in the agency, now I'm going to try and scale that up? Or were you even thinking about what the potential was there in terms of revenue and growth?
So this is the part where most people would talk about, they would make up some bullshit story about wanting to give back to the community and so on. It's very simple, man. I had a lot of time and I wanted to make more money, and I had more people to take care of, my family. Yeah. And so it was just another revenue stream, right? And the thing I like about digital products is the scalability of it, right? You can sell, like, honestly, if you got your systems in place, it doesn't matter if you sell 5 copies of a book per day or 500, your workload really doesn't change. And so it's a really wonderful, it's not typically the best model sort of long-term, because, you keep having to maybe redo new offers and so on. But the scalability is really good. It's great for cash flow, and I like teaching. I actually think it's something that I'm pretty good at. And again, I'm not trying to make up some bullshit story here. That's kind of a secondary thing. That the fact that I like it, but it is a sort of a business model that fits me, and it was a great other revenue stream. So that's kind of a simple the simple backstory behind why I went into teaching it in the first place.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I guess the biggest thing with with service-based businesses is in the traditional sense is the larger your revenue, the more team you need. So you're constantly having to bring on more team, which is going to lead to more headaches. And it's depending whether you want to go through that process of constantly
lower margins.
So I can completely understand the transition there from service-based to sort of information.
Well, look, I always talk about this, right? So if you think about agency, that's a done-for-you service typically, meaning clients say, hey, we need this, and we've got a team, we'll do it for you. That's just one type of a business, right? Even with an agency, there's room for the other two, which I call, DIY, do it yourself, and DWY, done with you. So that's what we do, right? The book is do it yourself. And the reason why that's great is because it's do it yourself, right? We sell the information and then they're on their own. So like I said, the scalability is really there. Then what you can do is go to the next level, which would be done with you. That's where maybe there's consulting involved. So you're still not executing on behalf of the client, but because you have expertise, you can advise them. You can save them time and money by, having them skip a couple of mistakes that you've made and so on. You throw a course on top of that, and you've got a nice product that you can sell to people, and you can still be there in a done with you capacity, consulting and helping them out. And then you can sell done for you. So I typically think this doesn't work for every single agency, but for SEO agencies, for example, there's absolutely room to sell SEO information on the front end, teach them how to do it, then have a online course and a sort of group coaching situation where the expert, the consultant is there actually helping people get results. And then you can have a done for you back end. And that kind of allows you to get the best of both worlds, right? Because with done for you, you can charge, really high prices. But like you said, you've got X amount of growth that you can hit until you reach a certain threshold where you need to make the decision, like, am I going to go in and get all the headaches that comes with running a digital or a marketing agency that has 50 employees, 100 employees, and kind of live on those tiny margins? Am I going to do that? Or do I introduce some other types of business models into the same brand, such as do it yourself and done with you? And so I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's very easy for somebody, you're a great example of somebody who's just been doing the right thing for so many years, and you've built this brand and you're putting out, consistently good content, and you've taught me SEO and I've gotten results with SEO. So I know that you know it. And so it's just your example of somebody who only did one, right? Like you only did done for you, and you have this amazing opportunity to just add another arm to your business. And it should, it's another revenue stream that also feeds the current one. So I think a lot of people are in that situation where they're only doing one and they could easily add the other two without straying away from their core business or straying away from the company that they've already built.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm currently in a position now where I'm always looking at how can we scale, but equally how can we scale without having to increase our staff by 10x. And I think what you're suggesting, effectively is creating an ecosystem of services and products that all interlink, whether they're upsells, downsells, that are going to effectively work together. And these things compound, once you've got one, then you can add 2, 3, 4, and before you know it, you've 5x your revenue, 10x your revenue.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example too. So again, with this book, we did it for a client. He did have the book, but we did everything else. We built a sales funnel. We helped him with the video. We did the whole thing, like all the work apart from the actual book itself. We basically did for him. He launched and he sold like I think 7,000 books in the first 5 days.
Wow.
He's had to hire 3 salespeople. He's booked out a month and a half in advance from now for strategy calls, like fully booked every single day for 6 weeks. And so the point is, we started with a do-it-yourself thing, but we have a done for you on the back end, you know? So even though this is kind of more of a, you know, like an online course or whatever that people would usually build, we can turn that into an agency as well by throwing done for you services in on the back end. And you can charge, you know, really high prices for that, especially if you're any good and if your stuff works, you know?
Talk to me about why you like the book as a sort of front end offer, because obviously you've done that twice now, and there's lots out there. You've got, you know, loads of people that follow people like Russell Bronson and ClickFunnels and the value ladder and all this type of thing. Why do you feel that? And I also want to find out why it worked for you and it didn't work for others in terms of having a front end offer and being able to scale that. So yeah, talk to me about that and books and why you think it worked for you versus other people that have tried something either similar or used the webinar.
So I like it because, as I touched on before, the idea of buying $1,000 course through a webinar and pray that it contains this golden nugget that you're looking for is kind of a big gamble, right? There's a significant opportunity cost for the average person to spend $1,000 on something that they really don't know what they're going to get until they buy it. So it's kind of a blind purchase in a way. And if I charge you $5 for an ebook, you can't complain. Like, sure, you know, you would be surprised, but you do get $5 refunds from India and so on. People still want their $5 back, no matter how good your stuff is. But that's what I like about it. Like, what's $5 to anybody, basically all over the world? The opportunity cost is so low, and because of that low risk, it allows you to get scale. And so that's what I like about it. That's why we like to do it again. And it also it allows you. You know, if they never heard about you, they'd like to see what you can do, right? And so if they pick up your book and they say, hey, there's 7 ideas here that I fucking never heard of anywhere else on the planet. What else do these people know? If they know all these things, I want to know what else is on the back here. Like, what's not the tip of the iceberg, but what's underneath the surface here? I want to know that stuff. So that's, to answer your question, that's why I like books. And I'm not married to books, by the way. It could be an online course. It could be, if you're in some different space, you know, it could be like a physical product. The idea is simply that it should be inexpensive, which allows you to get a lot of customers because the risk is so low. And so that's why I like it. And the reason why other people don't make it work is they don't see the full picture. They see the tip of the iceberg, and that's what they do. And you see these people all the time, because how many books have you seen pop up on your Facebook feed, and then you see them once and then you never see them again, or you see them 5 times in a week and then you never see them again? And how many books have you seen for a year? Not many. There's probably a handful of books that you see for a year. And it's because those guys have a back end. They might have ClickFunnels to sell on the back end. They might have, there's Sabri Subi, guy, really, I don't know him, but I respect him. He's got a digital agency on the back end, so I know that that's how he makes it work, right? So the people who try to make money off of the book, they don't last for a week, because it's not enough. It might have worked 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when advertising costs were lower, but it doesn't work these days. Like, you have to put in the work to do 2 funnels, a client acquisition funnel and a profit funnel. And they're totally different, but you got to have both these days.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference I've seen with what you're doing is that you're investing just as much time, energy, and expertise into the front end offer, the book, as you are into your, you know, the actual back end services and products you're providing. You're giving a huge amount of value up front, whereas, you know, the amount of times that you'd buy or you get a free ebook, or it'll be a really cheap ebook, and it would be the bare bones of any information, which doesn't provide any real value to the end user. They're just after a quick buck. They're not looking at that longer term picture. I think that is one of the key differences for what you guys are doing in particular.
Yes, 100%.
Is you're really focusing on giving it's a proper book. It's like if you sold that as a standalone book in a book, on Amazon, it would sell purely based on the quality of the information. So that's really, really useful stuff. And guys, if you haven't, where can they get this? Is this out?
At the time of this recording, you cannot, but we are getting very close to launching it. So it will be available at automaticlines.com when it is. And
when it is live, I will add a link in the comments. I don't know when it's going to be, but we'll certainly add it in there.
Hopefully in the next 30 days or so.
Yeah. So
we're getting there.
Yeah, no, it's these things, like you said, it takes time to
we're coming up on a year. We're coming up on a year for this whole book project. So like you said, you there's lead gen books where they follow this strategy that we talk about, which is, hey, sell a low dollar product and get people in, but then they don't do the other part where we say tip the scales, like charge them $5 but put $1,000 worth of value in there. They don't do that part, but we've done that part, and that takes time.
Why do you think then you obviously have a lot of people that come through even into your program, people that have tried this type of thing. Why do you think some succeed and some don't? Like, what's the and I'm talking maybe even just as in general, any online business. Why is it? Can you point to anything that you've done or anything that you've seen amongst the people that you surround yourself with for the reason why they are successful? And look, successful can be, it depends on the individual, what you class as success. Some people class success as 6 figures a year. Some class it as 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, who knows? But why do you think that some are able to achieve their goals and others aren't? Is there anything that you can pinpoint or you've seen from?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been asked this question many times, and as far as I can see, there's only one thing. Some people give up and some people don't. And that's really what it comes down to. And so I have this perspective as well on online courses. And that perspective is that the success rate of any online course is more or less the same, because it's not about the course, it's the person taking the course. And so what I mean by that is you could give, because there's the part of giving up and not giving up, but then there's the part of are you giving them a system that actually works? Now, if you have a crappy course where they're given a system that isn't complete, it doesn't work, the person who's motivated, they're going to go and fill those gaps in one way or another. It might take them 8 years, but they'll fill those gaps at some point. And then you can give somebody a complete system that absolutely 100% works, and you don't have to change anything. You literally just follow the steps. But this is real life. If you want good results, there's going to be work involved. And so you could give somebody the exact 4 steps they got to do, but if they're not motivated, if they don't have like a strong reason to do it, and it's just kind of something cool or something they kind of like the idea of, then they'll give up sooner or later, because it doesn't matter, what businesses it is or who you are, whatever. There's going to be road bumps and challenges and so on. And that's where people either give up or they sort of double down. And that's really all it comes down to. So I really believe it's about the person being dedicated or not dedicated that's going to determine whether it works or not. Because again, like I said, if you give them an incomplete solution, if they're motivated, they're still going to go out there and fill the gaps and find answers that they don't yet have. And the flip side of that is true as well. So,
I mean, do you? Yes, it obviously comes down to hard work, motivation, and discipline to keep pushing through. Do you think things like self-belief and self-esteem in individuals that is one element of why they continue
Yes.
and push through?
Yes.
Or is there any?
Yes.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to
that's a
delve
good
in
question.
further,
Yeah,
because some
I think
people will
so.
work and some people won't. But is there any reasoning behind why they're not putting in the work?
Yeah,
That's
I mean, that's a really, really good question. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, yes. I think that's a really good question, and I do believe, especially the self-belief part, because I understand why you would give up if you don't really see it in your head working out. So that was never for me. I'm lucky in the sense that when I start something or when I do something, I'll just kind of look around and say, oh, there's three other guys who did it, so that means it's possible. So then I can do it. Like the 4 minute mile thing, right? Like nobody did it in history. One guy did it, and then like 2 years later, like 32 other people did it. So I just need like a little bit of evidence that it worked for somebody, and if that's the case, then that box is ticked, meaning like, hey, it's doable. If it's doable, then it's doable for me, so I can do it. And so that allows me to push through those hard times because I know that it does work. And I'm lucky in that respect. I don't think the average person maybe is as easy when it comes to that self-belief as I am, which I'm very happy about. For me, it's a good thing. But I think it's a very good point that you bring up, and yes, I think that plays a huge part, and a good reason why somebody might give up is the fact that they can't see it working out for them. And so
Yeah.
why would you continue,
And how do you think people can develop that self-belief? Is that like for me, I'm thinking I didn't believe I could get to a certain level of income until I started mixing and surrounding myself with the right people. I may have had the books and the information in front of me, but until I pulled myself out of my existing environment and put myself in a place where I'm actually mixing with people, and people are saying, yes, you can do this, or I know three other people, like you mentioned, that have done exactly what I want to do, then I only started to believe it. What do you think that is a big thing? It's important, that the average, you are the average of the five people you surround yourself with. What's your take on that whole that whole ethos?
Yeah, I mean, you cannot argue with that. I think that is so true. And I think there's also, there's different convincer models. So we all fall into different buckets or different categories of like what's going to convince us that something is true. Some people just need to hear it once. Some people might need to see it once. Some people need to experience it themselves. And some people are just never fully convinced. They just need, to be I guess, confirmed of that that's the case. So what you're saying about the five people, that's just I guess one aspect of that, where you're being introduced to evidence that it is possible, and that kind of allows you to be convinced from that perspective. And so I don't think you can argue with the idea that if you surround yourself with people doing better than you, then you're going to do better as well. And I've seen this plenty in my own life. And the most vivid example I have of this is when I was in high school. So I have this weird backstory, right? Where I moved to Japan when I was 16. I went to an American high school, and every Tuesday and Thursday we had a golf club, five people at school, where we would go with one of the teachers to one of the American military base golf courses, and we would play golf, just 9 holes after school every Tuesday and Thursday. And I was like by far the worst golfer there, but those were my friends, and we became really friendly. And so it didn't matter that I was way worse than they were. I would show up every Tuesday and Thursday the same way that they did. But the fact that they were so much better than me, like, it didn't take me very long. Like, it happened so quickly because all I could see around me was, other people absolutely crushing it at golf. And then I'll never forget, there was this one day. So for the golfers out there, to put some actual numbers on this, I believe I was like an 18 handicapper at the time, and my friend was a 3 handicapper. And we played a tournament a couple of months later, and I ended up shooting a 75, which is what a 3 handicapper should shoot. And my 3 handicapper friend shot like a 78 or something. So I actually beat him. It would be the equivalent of, I don't know, your kind of friend that goes to the boxing gym, knocking out Mike Tyson. Like, it just shouldn't happen. And so you definitely cannot argue with that. And then there's more to it, where like there are different convincer models where people can probably identify who they are and maybe try to introduce more of what they need in their life. But you're absolutely right. I mean, that's like the one shortcut, is like just try to get around people that are doing much better than you, because it just happens naturally, and it happens so much faster than if you were to go do it any other way.
100% agree. I think like if your 3 closest friends are millionaires, the likelihood is you're going to be the 4th millionaire. So with that being said, what would you suggest to people in terms of, say they want to get around the right type of people, they want to get a mentor? What have you found to be the most successful way to get around successful people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the tricky part about that equation is that it doesn't really stack up, in the sense of there's no value, usually there's no value that you're going to bring to people that are much more successful than you. So why would they want you there in the first place? So that's kind of the tricky part, right? And people have this weird, like, socially awkward thing about mentorship, where they think you can just go to somebody and say, hey, can you be my mentor? And it's like, that's such a weird thing to do, right? And there's usually much more value in the mentee than the mentoring. And there's so much, usually the more successful the person, the less time they have. So you're also asking them for a lot of their, time and energy and so on. But I will give you, because I've thought about this, and I do have a good answer, like a practical way to actually do this. And this is only going to work for people who are willing to do the work and then do it. And so the way that you do it is you find somebody who has the results you want. And this only works, by the way, if they're teaching. And so what you do is you find somebody who actually has the results that you want. Now you got to verify that. And then what you do is you buy something from them, whether it's their book or you buy their course or their coaching or whatever. You spend a lot of money with them, you're more likely to be able to pull this off. So you do that. And then once you've done that, you actually do what they teach you, and you show them that you did what they taught you. And then ideally, you have results to back that up with. Now, all of a sudden, you are actually of value to them as well, because you might want to become sort of a success story, or you're further proof that the stuff that they do is working. And so I've seen this many, many times, where somebody buys an online course of somebody else, and really they're equally cool people, equally nice. They probably would be friends already if they met under different circumstances, but maybe one of them is older, he has more experience and so on. So at the, as far as like social status and everything goes, they might be on the same status, but because of the way that, it's kind of like a student teacher thing, they're kind of introduced to, from a social status point of view, they're kind of introduced, the relationship starts off like this. But then as you come in, you do the work, you show the results, then you kind of start to get rid of that gap a bit. And then before you know it, you're just kind of friends with them. And this actually happened with, the guy that I bought my online course from, and it was very natural. It wasn't calculated. I just did what he said. I got results. Then he was in my town one day, and because he had kind of seen me around and he thought that I was a, reasonably cool guy and I'd gotten results, he said, fuck it, why don't we meet up? We met up, we hit it off, and we became really good friends. And, we're still friends to this day. And I see other people do this all the time. So find somebody who's got the results you want, buy something from them, do what they say, and show them and let them know. And probably they will be more receptive to talking to you. And then don't get all like awkward about it. Like, let it happen naturally, but you take it from there, right? You just develop a friendship, and it's not always going to work, but it is a practical way of being able to pull that off and getting, a new friend or a mentor, or however you want to look at that.
Yeah, no, for me personally, the quickest way for me is always been pay for access.
Yes.
How have we, like me and you, how was I able to work with you and get to know you? And now I was, class you as a good friend, and
Yeah, exactly. That's another great example. I didn't even think about it, but yeah, like you paid me for coaching and stuff back in the day, and then we just kind of became friendly, and now we're just friends, right? And that's it.
Exactly. And I think it's not. I think a lot of people, when they're going after a mentor as well, they put them on a pedestal, almost like you'd be talking to a hot girl. And it becomes, if anything, it's repellent.
You're reinforcing that weird dynamic. Yeah, that's a very good point. It's important to not do that and just treat them like another human being, right?
100%. And I think, even just having, not always talking about business, like me and you will talk about, we've got both like MMA, and we're fans of MMA, and we'll talk about that.
I will smash this guy.
Khabib Nurmagomedov. I can never pronounce his surname for all you MMA fans out there. Undisputed, undefeated, lightweight champ. Yeah. No, I think, like I said, the paying for some form of access, and that next level of what you mentioned was go and get the results as well, because that mentor is going to want to use you as a case study, and that's only going to strengthen that.
And not only that, like we've all on some level taught other people something, right? Whether you are actually a coach and you've got paying students, or maybe you've just you've got some kid in the neighborhood. If somebody is actually listening to you and doing what you say, you are so grateful for that, and you're much more like inclined to keep giving them advice and keep trying to help them, because you know that they're actually going to try to go out there and get the result. And like, how many times have we tried to help somebody where we know we can help them, but they don't do anything? So like, you kind of lose interest in, like, why even bother, right? Like, why should I waste my time if I know that the expectation is you're not going to do anything with this? And then the flip side is, if I know that you're actually doing this and you're getting results, it's not just about me getting another testimonial, but just on a personal level, like I want to help you, right? Or I want to help that person. And I know if I spend more time with them, they're actually going to do more, and they're actually going to get better results. And so, that's kind of how it happens naturally as well. So that's really important.
No, I like that. I like that approach. One final thing I want to ask you, Robert, is a number of the businesses that you've been involved in, you've had a business partner. And I've had an experience of working with a business partner before when I was a lot younger, a lot more naive. Didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
Is there any tips for, say, anyone that's looking to start with a business partner or is looking for a business partner? Any words of wisdom you could give people for finding the right type of business partner, and how that dynamic should be a good fit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can give some ideas, but I fully understand that it is very difficult, because it is a relationship in the same way that having a wife is a relationship, in the sense of there's nobody that's perfect, first of all, right? You're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. And then there's qualities that I look for in a business partner and my wife, right? Like I look for similar qualities. And but when it comes down to it, it's very hard to just pick somebody out, because you only find out if they're a good partner by spending a lot of time with them and working with them, right? And so it's hard to become partner without doing that stuff first. So typically what happens is you become partner, then you start working more and more together, and then eventually you find out whether it was good or not. But some ideas to think about are, if they're just like you, they're probably not the best partner, right? Like, I've had partnerships where the other partner, there was nothing that he could do better than me. Nothing. And so that's like a little bit of like, even though, they might be great, it's still kind of like, why are we partners? Like, you don't really bring whatever I wish you brought to the table. But that honestly, that's not a big deal. That's okay, because like I said, nobody's going to be perfect and so on. And there's nothing that says you have to be a 50-50 partner, but that's one thing. One big thing that I haven't heard discussed anywhere is the idea of reasonability. That's big for me. And what I mean by that is, and I look for this in my wife without knowing it, and I look for it in my business partners. And what I mean by that is, I think we can all agree that a business partnership or even a marriage or something is going to be very much stronger and better off after 10 years of incredible highs and incredible lows where you stuck through it, right? Versus the beginning. And so the reason I think about reasonability is I'm expecting low points to occur, and I'm interested in how are you going to be able to deal with that, because I know I'm reasonable. So I know that even if you fuck me over or whatever, like I'm still going to be able to find whatever the most reasonable solution is going to be. But if you have like an immature partner or something, and you do hit a low point, which you will, are they just going to bounce? Are they going to steal money from you? Are they going to do all these things, right? So that's really, really important. And then there's obviously the big one of trust, which is probably the most difficult to test, right? You could maybe throw some actual tests out there. I don't know, like give somebody an opportunity to steal from you or whatever and see how, I don't know. I've never really, I never had to go there, but ultimately that's like really the backbone. Like if you can't trust them, then you really have a ticking time bomb, right? And so just one thing that I thought about just very recently is that if you have a business partner, and you know, especially with us boys, like we can start talking, you know, the way that boys talk, right? And we talk about girls and da. And I was thinking about this idea of, if you have a business partner who you know is cheating on his wife, you're really fucked, because if he's able to go out there and cheat on his wife, why wouldn't he be able to go out there and cheat on you? Because like I said, so like that, because I know that that's really common, right? But that speaks to their character, right? And so you have to try to judge the character the best you can, but ultimately you can't really, it's one of those things like MMA math, right? You can't just always put it down on paper and get like the mathematical result. So these are just some things that maybe to look out for. Like ideally partner up with somebody who's really good at something you suck at. So my current partner right now, we have a good partnership because he is just probably, not probably, he's the best marketing and sales guy that I've ever been introduced to or seen around. And he is in many ways a genius. And a lot of these like genius visionary types of people are incredibly messy, disorganized, and so on. And so they lack that side of it. And I think if you are able to have two people bring, you know, one brings the visionary stuff and the genius, and one brings the organization aspect of it and keeping things together and the practical side of things, you're able to form a really good partnership that way. So, you know, ideally, because look, there are some parts of business that are much more important than others. And I would say sales and marketing are incredibly important. And then you have, you know, you can get by with, like, if I had to choose between great organizational skills and great sales and marketing, I would go sales and marketing because that's the lifeblood, right?
Yeah.
So just a final piece on the whole partner thing is, if you're not good at sales, that's probably one of the main things you should be looking for in a partner, in my opinion, is, are they strong in sales? Or at least are they excited about getting to a point where they're strong in sales and they have the potential? Because if you match sales with, you know, the other things in a business, then you're always going to be able to survive. And so those are, a couple of things to think about. So ideally partner with somebody who's not just another replica of you, which I think kind of tends to happen naturally. And then are they honest? You know, just try to pick up clues here and there. Like, are they cheating on their wife? Well, what is that saying about their character? Why wouldn't they cheat on you eventually if that's the case? Have they fucked over other partners, right? If they've had 14 other partnerships and all of them fell through, maybe they are the common thread there, right?
So are we looking at their actions? Are we observing their actions rather than their words? Is that what you're you know, do you even if it's conscious or subconsciously, do you look at that and just
yes, but also I'm looking outside of business, right? I'm looking
okay.
at their character. So like the cheating on the wife thing, right? Like if I had a partner who had a wife and he was cheating on her, I would go, well, he doesn't have integrity, he's dishonest, right? Because he's doing this. So if he does have that, then what's to say he wouldn't treat me the same way? There's no evidence that he would make an exception for me.
Yeah.
You know? And so, yeah, those are some things to think about. And then also, like, I've never done this either, but like, I've thought about this too, whether it's with a business partner, a girlfriend, or a customer. If you engineer a low point just to get it out of the way and just to gather data, I think that might actually be beneficial, because you need to see what that person acts like when shit hits the fan, because that's going to determine whether you can stick with them long term or not. So again, you got a girlfriend, you want to find out what happens when you guys get into a fight. What happens with your business partner when you get into a fight? Like, do they shut down? Do they go talk shit about you? Do they steal money? Like, you need to know what happens. Or do they just not talk to you for a day? They come back and say, hey, let's hash this out. Let's move forward and let's learn from this. If you got that, then that's when you know, like, oh, this is probably a good partnership, you know? And so, yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, but those are some things that I've picked up through the years that have really benefited me. Yeah.
That's some great points there. Some really good points. I think obviously it's very difficult to know until you actually go into that partnership. You could possibly do some form of research
Yeah,
and get to
it's
know them.
very hard.
Yeah. And
yeah,
I guess you're only going to know as time goes on what the level of trust and integrity of that person and their character, as you mentioned, is going to be as you start to move forward. Hopefully you find out quicker rather than later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And one more thing actually that came to mind is this idea of expectations, because I know that a lot of people partner up on things, and one of them might actually have a full-time job, and one of them is thinking, hey, I'm going to devote every hour to this. So now you have people, one of them is working full-time on it, one's putting in 2 hours a day. Having a 50-50 partnership there might not be the right thing. So discussing expectations on that business or that project before, that's something that you can probably have a fairly accurate discussion about before you dig into anything, before you start working together. So discussing expectations, I think, is a simple little thing you can do to try to get on the same page.
That sounds really good. There's so many topics I want to talk about, Robert. There really is, but obviously I'm very conscious of your time. Just one final thing that just popped into my head, because I know, having been in the program with yourself and your business partner Alan, that you've talked about productivity and how you've been able to improve productivity. Now, obviously, you've had you've got a wife, you've got two little kids. Like, your time is becoming more limited and valuable, and how you spend that time needs to be more efficient. So talk to the guys out there about how they can improve their productivity and stop procrastinating. I know that I've been guilty of that in the past, and I've been trying to improve my productivity. But yeah, I'd really like to get your intake on that, because I know that you talk about that in the book, in one of the chapters, and you've got some really great insights.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about productivity, I would say that there's micro things that you can do that have a little bit of impact, and then there's macro things. So you probably want to try to think about that, right? So an example of a micro thing would be like, hey, what's the best app for me to do my to-do list? And that's where I think a lot of people get caught up in the micro things, the things that don't really move the needle much as far as productivity goes. So, because the irony is, there are some of the best-selling business books out there are about productivity. And the irony is that if you're reading a book on productivity, you're not being productive, because it's another form of procrastination. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not valuable stuff in there, but let me tell you what you need for a to-do list. You need a pen and paper. Now go on, stop researching apps, right? Stop, you can move on. You can just do the simplest thing that's around, and that's going to be good enough. So a macro thing, though, would be something like having an actual, like a deeper reason for doing what you're doing. And then we get into the conversation of, we talk about if you're a personality who moves away from pain or who moves towards pleasure, because that's going to dictate what's actually going to get you to go to work. So for me, it's move away from pain, which I think is about 80% of people, where what lights me on fire, what gets me going more than anything, is when my back's up against the wall and I have bills that I can't pay. I have a big tax. Like, if I'm in that situation, that's when I really like productivity. The idea doesn't even enter my mind. I show up to work, I bang out tasks all day without looking away for a second. And then I have an incredibly effective day, and I do it day by day by day by day without even thinking about it, right? So there's that, right? Knowing what type of a person you are, and then it's about engineering those things. And so for those of you guys out there that are like me, who's kind of pain driven or trying to avoid pain, this is an extreme piece of advice, but I'll tell you, it fucking works. And I've heard this from, this piece of advice was something that I heard from, I had the same concept, and then I actually heard somebody else give this piece of advice, and this guy's worth, I don't know, he had a $10 million company at some point. So like, fairly successful guy. He's got a yacht and a $4 million house, like really successful guy. And he said basically the same thing, which is, I think the way that he phrased it was go buy something you can't afford. And what he means by that is not necessarily go buy something that you really can't pay for, but go buy something that puts your back up against the wall to the point where you kind of have to work. You can't just let your foot off the gas pedal. Because for those of you pain-driven people out there, that's actually going to solve the problem right away. It's going to be uncomfortable, and it might actually be a bad fucking idea if you fuck up and, like, let's say you go put your back up against the wall and then you get injured and you can't do the work to actually make money. But you know what I'm saying? It's an extreme piece of advice. So take it with a grain of salt, but nothing works better than that for pain-driven guys. And then if it's pleasure, then I think it's all about, it's harder for me to relate on that front, because rewards don't really motivate me. Like the idea of getting X amount of sales and buying myself a new house or something like that it doesn't really get me going, in the core, the way that a tax bill that I can't afford gets me going. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit of self-awareness, and then engineering based on which sort of category you fall into. Because that, again, these are macro things. And when you do that, all the bullshit goes away. Like all the ideas of like, what's the app I need for the best to-do list? Like, what's the project management tool I need? Like, you just start getting stuff done without even thinking about it. And so you do that. And then the missing component is just having clarity on what needs to get done. Because if you don't have that, it's really hard to kind of sit down and do what you're supposed to. So yeah, that's kind of my thing on productivity. It's this thing that people can get really wrapped up into as this like thing, but the more it's something that you don't even think about, the more you're doing it right.
Yeah.
And if you have to think about how do I become more productive, you're doing it wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're probably reading one too many books and not actually doing anything.
Yeah. And the fact that you have the time to even think about it is just,
Yeah. Shortcut is get yourself a wife and 2 kids, and then the bills will soon go.
Yeah. I mean, look, for some people that will absolutely help them. Like it really would help them.
Yeah. Well, I guess you've got that why, haven't you? That drive to,
I do, but I'll be honest with you. If I was single, like, you do hear a lot of people say like, oh, when I had my first kid or something, I got this massive drive and I never looked back. There's zero difference in my drive from pre-kids, pre-wife, and so on. I was this way before. I know to some people that is a big driver, but yeah, that didn't really change anything for me. It just kind of, I guess made it even more obvious. But I would have been doing the same stuff basically if I was just a single dude trying to make some money,
Yeah. So, final question, and I've probably said that a few times in this interview because I know you've got so much. I'm like,
it's all good, man.
Yeah, there's so much stuff that I know that you've got some. Honestly, guys, the amount of information Robert's giving here is valuable stuff. So please do watch the interview and take notes as well, because I'm sure there's this really great stuff in here. Finally, then, I guess one piece of advice you'd give someone that is looking to start some form of online business. You've got lots of people at the moment that are either, the business is not doing too great, or they're looking to pivot because they're worried about, the COVID situation. You've got maybe people that have been made redundant from their jobs, and maybe they're thinking now is the time that I can actually start an online business. What one sort of piece of advice would you give to someone in 2020 that wants to start an online business that can potentially really help them establish?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you one piece of advice, and there's another piece of advice embedded in that piece of advice. And the piece of advice I'm going to give you is go get this book. And the reason I say that is because I wrote it, right? So a lot of the ideas, they stem from my partner, Alan. So he's an absolute genius, like we've talked about when it comes to marketing and sales. But we've discussed it, and I put in this stuff. So I know this book better than anybody else because I'm the one who actually put the words on paper. I know that the model works because we've done it, a few times, and we actually have been helping people for 10 months to implement this stuff. And everybody who actually does the work and do what we say, they all get results. And, our best guy at the moment had a $240,000 a month. So wow. We know that it really works. And, that's probably one of the hardest things today is actually finding a strategy that works, right? So the piece of advice is go get the book. And like I said, it's not even available right now. So depending on when you're watching this, I obviously have the book, fucking bribe me to send you a PDF. You know what I mean? Get the book. And so the piece of advice that's embedded in that is if you put more time into making a better product. So this is a mistake that I've done in the past where I didn't believe in my products well enough to shamelessly promote them because I knew that they were not exceptional. When you have a product that's exceptional, you actually become an advocate for your product on a different level than before, because it's kind of cringy for somebody to say, hey, go buy my book in an interview about me. But I have no shame around it because I know that it's going to help people. Now, if that's missing, if I don't know that it's going to help people, I'm not giving that piece of advice in this interview. I'm coming up with something else when you ask me that. You see what I mean? So I've seen this several times now where because we put so much work into this book and because we've seen the evidence that it works, it's literally the best piece of advice I can give you is go and buy the book however you need to buy it, because I know that it works. The information that's in there is something that you can apply whether you're starting out or you have a business and it's not working on the level you want to. So yeah, one piece of advice, but there's another important piece embedded in there, which I think is important because I've seen it multiple times now where I have pushed a little bit further. Like somebody wanted to buy one product from us, but we had a much more expensive product, which I knew would get them the result that they wanted. And so if I wasn't that confident in that product, which was several $1,000s, I would have never told them to go buy that instead. But because this guy wanted to buy something from us and I knew the result he wanted and I knew that he was most likely to get it from this much more expensive product, I still told him, look, man, I don't think you should buy this thing. Book a call with Alan, talk to him. And he actually ended up joining and he doubled his investment in the first week. So, but the point is when you believe in your product, you really can start to sell it a lot more because you kind of remove any shame about promoting it. So.
Yes. Yeah, look, I can definitely adhere to that. The book, going back to the book is golden. There is I'm reading it currently at the moment, and I'm on Robert and Alan's program as well. I could definitely adhere to that. So go. Yeah. whatever you do, try and get that book.
So find Charlie and steal it from him if you have to.
Yeah.
He's obviously got a copy, so.
Yeah. No, I need this copy. This is valuable stuff. I'm not giving this out to anyone. You're gonna have to pay a lot of money for this. Where's the best place to find you online?
That's a good question, because I've been off like the whole, putting out content and doing interviews and so on stuff for a while. I've archived my whole Instagram account, so there's no pictures on there anymore. I've deleted the app. I've deleted the Facebook app from my phone. So I'm not really, active out there. I'm just kind of, like I said before, if you have to think about productivity, you're doing it wrong. So I've just deleted all the apps and I'm in there and I'm working. So to answer your question, I would imagine the best place is going to be like, find me on Facebook. I do still check it on the desktop, or go check out the automaticlines.com website if that's up for the book. That's probably the best way to find out more.
Cool. Yeah, we'll put your details in the YouTube comments. Honestly, really appreciate your time, Robert. I know that obviously you're a busy man, and I'm sure the audience has found this of value. So until next time, people, peace out.
Thanks a lot.